To Ururoa Flavell.
Mr. Speaker, kia ora tātou te koe te kore, kia ora tātou ko te taimai tēnei pō. Pēnei i te ahutango ngā kōrero i rungi o tātou marae, ko tāku i te tuatahi he tuku poroporo ake ki a koe ewiha, ki a koe Maxine, kōrua tahi, ko ngaro atu te tirohanga kanohi, ngā pau o te reo Maori te wāia kōrua, ko tētahi i eke ki te kuia, ki te āhuatanga o te kuia, ko tētahi he tamareki tonu. Hoi anō, aha ko pēhea, kōrua tahi, haere. Whakangaru atu i te tirohanga kanohi, me te mōhia no hoki, ko tutuki pai ngā āhuatanga i te wā ia koutou, mo te aha mo te paingo tō tātou reo.
Mr. Speaker, as appropriate, before I begin proper to a farewell to people, Wiha Maxwell and Maxine, two pillars of the reo Maori, two fighters for the reo. One passed away as a kuia, an elder, but the other unfortunately did not reach that status. But we say farewell to them and we acknowledge the good works that they did.
Kia ora hoi. Mr. Speaker, this last week, Māoridom lost two key figures who advanced te reo Māori. Wiha Malcolm, I think that was her name when she did pass away, and Maxine Tamahori, who was well on in age, but both doyens of Māori language. And I suppose it has some influence with respect to discussion about this bill, in the sense that the context of the Māori world around us is something that they knew in their time and were promoters of the notion of te reo Māori as an expression, as using te reo Māori to express our worldview as tangata whenua. Our environment, our weather system, our natural world is woven throughout all of the waiata that they used to teach about our stories, and they help to guide our daily lives. I suppose to help the House understand that, one example of how we use te reo Māori to express that notion of the environment being intertwined with us as a people is to take one whakatauki which says, nau I whakatakoto te hinaki I te wai tā wā rua, anei te waituhi ka taha. Loosely interpreted, the message is that the eel pot should be set during the main flood, after all of the smaller eels have passed through and leaving the bigger ones to follow. What this whakatauki is really saying is that if we are to be effective, timing is everything. I've been thinking about the simple message as we've looked into at the forest sector amendments as they apply to the New Zealand emissions trading scheme. And in essence, Mr. Speaker, the key issue in this slim little bill is to delay requirements relevant to the forest sector under the ETS, as other speakers have alluded to. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party has been well served on the Climate Change Review Select Committee by our member for Te Taitonga, Rahui Kātene. Mrs. Kātene, in turn, has appreciated the excellent advice that has come forward from nearly 30 submissions from Māori trusts, corporations and runanga. And it goes without saying that we're mindful of the advice from the iwi leaders group, people including Api Mahuika of Ngāti Pro, Tumu Te Heuheu of Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Mark Solomon of Ngaitahu, and other iwi actively engaged in the emissions trading scheme. The iwi leaders group supported the delay. Ngaitahu are comfortable with the delay, and I understand that the Central North Island Iwi Collective have also passed a resolution supporting the delay on the basis that they have been given assurances that their position would be no worse. This is an excellent and important qualifier, the support being conditional on the basis that iwi will not be in a worse position. Mr. Speaker, as the other speakers have mentioned, the current law under the Climate Change Response Act requires foresters to have reported any deforestation during 2008 by 31st of January 2009 and to apply for exemptions for small forest blocks by 30 June 2009. And without putting too fine a point on it, that's actually next Tuesday. These dates are unreasonable given the process still in train of the committee review and the associated lack of public awareness of these requirements. We recognise, therefore, that without this bill, many forest owners would unknowingly find themselves in breach of the law or adversely affected. Mr. Speaker, while it is a very complex picture, it seems that iwi with forest interests support the delay, and as such, we respect their views. Some of the inherent complexity can be understood by looking at the CNI iwi collective in a little bit more detail. We know that there is likely to be a split view across different iwi with forestry interests, depending on whether or not they supported the emissions trading scheme in the first place. But there are other layers to the complexity. Reaction to this bill may depend on whether an iwi is a part of the CNI group, the settlement group, whether they wanted to settle or not, or whether, like Ngāti Tū Wharetoa, they have forest lands included in the CNI settlement and extensive forest estates outside of it. It's a complex picture, and it is vital that we get it right, not to hurry for the sake of political expediency. Mr. Speaker, we must take care to consider how we meet the Kyoto obligations, how we can protect the climatic systems from excess carbon emissions, while also considering the adjustments required specifically to achieve fair and equitable provisions for the forest sector. Mr. Speaker, the House has the benefit of some very strongly expressed views from Maori to assist them in knowing how we can improve upon the legislation. There was the consistent recommendation that there should be a section included in the bill which established a bottom line position, namely that, quote, nothing in this act shall be inconsistent with the Treaty of Waitangi, end of quote. The Federation of Maori Authorities went so far as to say that the bill breaches the treaty in failing to uphold rangatiratanga, while Māori Kaunui Incorporation added that the finding that this bill, that the bill as drafted conflicts with the principles and provisions of Te Ture Whenua Māori Act 1993. The sticking point is that it imposes an encumbrance over Māori land, which is effectively an alienation. Mr. Speaker, perhaps one of the clearest explanations of the issues related to this bill come from the submission from Te Runanga o Ngaitahu. Their concern was chiefly to do with their land, which they considered to be most suitable for conversion to another commercial use. Ngaitahu purchased this land before 2002, when the government announced its intention to introduce some form of deforestation controls. Ngaitahu were therefore unable to take advantage of the 2002-2008 period to deforest key areas of land, as many owners of the pre-1990 forests have done. In fact, they concluded that Ngaitahu would suffer a disproportionate and significant liability as a result. The financial cost and the opportunity cost for Ngaitahu would be huge in its scope. It was the thinking of Ngaitahu, Te Runanga o Ngaitahu that is, that land returned as a part of a treaty settlement that falls into these categories should be excluded. Ngāti Awa of the Whakatane area, meanwhile, believed that those iwi in the same position as them should be eligible for a one-off adjustment to choose how they wish to use their lands in the future without reference to the emissions trading scheme. Such an option would have meant that they can make the choice that they originally envisaged they would have when they purchased the forest, and therefore be required to comply with the ETS. Mr. Speaker, I described the context of this bill as complex, and I think the more one reads through the submissions and appreciates the range of issues emerging from it, it becomes all the more evident that there is a great deal more to this bill than the 5 pages would initially indicate. Wairongo Mai Incorporation put it bluntly, the bill is inequitable and has disproportionate negative effects on Māori. It was their position that the Crown had assumed to itself the ownership, allocation and management of the carbon allocation resource. Mr. Speaker, I return to the advice from the Federation of Māori Authorities. Whaima told the Select Committee that Māori know full well the need for climate change policy. Tangata whenua are fully in support of the focus on behaviour change to mitigate human impacts on the climate. This is in line with our kaupapa of kaitiakitanga, the capacity to nurture our spiritual, cultural and environmental protection of te ao marama. That's taken for granted. But when we get to this bill, what we see is significant inequality of treatment of Māori. By locking Māori lands into this regime and legislating how Māori are to use their lands, the bill perpetrates a system of inequalities, which I'm sure the Minister will be considering as the bill moves through various passages. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party has supported the call from many Ururanga, iwi and incorporations for the Treaty of Waitangi clause to be added to the bill, and the call for Ngaitahu for amendments to protect the integrity and durability of their settlement. and we listen again to the views of, and now we listen again to the views of Maori who are saying that they should support the call to delay, and that therefore will be our vote for this first reading of this bill. Tēnā tātou.